Come on in and take a seat. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. You know what? We got to start. Good morning. My name is Theresa Libby. I'm one of the organizers of this event, Understanding and Responding to Mass Incarceration, with our theme this year, Women in the System. I really appreciate everyone being here this morning, and I'm very, very excited about our program today. I want to talk a little bit about what you can expect from the day, and I also want to say a thank you to our sponsors whose names are projected here. Our host sponsor is, of course, Metropolitan State University, who has always generously supported this event. We also are in partnership with the Ramsey County Attorney's Office this year, who have helped make our keynote speakers presentation available. We're also grateful to have received support from the Council for Minnesotans of African Heritage, for the Minnesota ACLU, from Community Mediation and Restorative Services, and from the Hazelden Betty Ford Graduate School of Addiction Studies. So shout out to them. For helping to make this event possible and free, which has been our commitment from the beginning. Some of you have donated as well. There was that option on registration, so thank you so much for being generous and supportive of this event. I want to call your attention to your packet very quickly. You'll see in it more information about each of the sponsors. You will also find an agenda, which is on green paper, that lets you know what to expect throughout the day. We do have a fairly long stretch in the morning before a break. We have a lengthy break in the late morning, but those who are welcoming you today and our keynote and our panel will go consecutively without a break. So, of course, just take care of yourselves as you need to. For at least a while, we'll still have the coffee and refreshments out on the table in the reception area, and the restrooms are on the far side of the reception area. Also in your packet is a blue sheet, which gives the breakout sessions. You'll see the topics and you'll see the rooms that they're in. For those of you not familiar with the Metropolitan State Campus, there will be folks available to direct you to the specific classrooms after the break. So they'll be down at this door and, of course, up in the reception area. And the classrooms are in the lower level of this building and the second lower level of the next building over here. The idea with the breakouts is to stay with the same one for both morning and afternoon. In the breakout session in the late morning, there's more information, more experience that's shared that allows you to have a stronger sense of the particular topic for that breakout session. And the afternoon piece is really the key. Because that's about what you can do. That's about how you can get involved, how you can make a difference by organizing, engaging in activism and advocacy. For lunch, I'll say more about lunch later, but just so you have a preview, you'll pick it up in the reception area and then bring it in here where we have a lunchtime speaker and performance. It's now my pleasure to introduce the president of Metropolitan State University, Ginny Arthur, and I will, and there she is, yay. I knew she was here. President Arthur is going to talk a little bit about what we're here for this morning, and then is going to introduce Councilwoman Jenkins. President Arthur?
Well, thank you so much, Theresa. And good morning to everyone, and welcome to Metropolitan State University. It really says something that at 8:30 in the morning on a Friday, when we've had a horrible snow event, that I can look out and see a nearly full auditorium, and I know that people are still out in the lobby registering and grabbing a cup of coffee. I think that tells us what an important issue this is for our community. When I welcome you to Metropolitan State and when we're having events like this where we have so many members of our surrounding community with us, I do like to take a moment for us to recall that Metropolitan State, our students, and the community that we work with, we are all beneficiaries of the Dakota who originally used this land as their summer hunting grounds. And you can imagine with the Mississippi River, the hollow just below us, and the ability to be here on the bluff with the magnificent view of the surrounding countryside, why this was a beautiful and sacred place for the Dakota. And while we know that we did not come by this land in a way that we can be proud of, I do want to always acknowledge our gratitude and our indebtedness to the community for us having this beautiful facility. Thank you. I am so honored that that we are hosting the 6th annual convening of the Understanding and Responding to Mass Incarceration Conference, and especially this year with its focus on women in the system. Again, this is a commitment, and I remember the first one. We started with a relatively small group, and every year attendance and participation has grown. And what is, I think, so heartening about that is that we have an academic community and a broader community that is really interested in understanding what these issues are so that we can take action to interrupt the situations that lead to this mass incarceration. Despite the bad weather we were having yesterday and the university actually closed its doors at 5 p.m., we did try to preserve the screening of the film Milwaukee 53206. Were any of you able to make it here for the film? Great, and I heard, you know, given the weather, we had a very nice turnout, and so I am glad that you were able to see that. I hear it's a very powerful film. It was interesting to me in thinking about it because not unrelated to today's topic, on Wednesday evening, we premiered a documentary film about early childhood education. And it may not come as a surprise to anyone in this auditorium that our society could actually interrupt the cradle to prison pipeline by investing in the development of our babies and young children. It makes such a difference. And you know, maybe a call out to Council Member Jenkins that the city of St. Paul is actually offering a universal early childhood education for kids 3 to 5. So anyway, a challenge to our sister city. Well, this morning I want to take a moment also to extend thanks to all the university colleagues who have been working hard to make this conference available. Jody Bantley from our Institute for Community Engagement and Scholarship has taken the lead in planning as a liaison and helping with the logistics. Our faculty, including Dr. Theresa Libby, who just introduced me, Dr. Raj Setharaju, you all know Dr. Raj, Deborah Mosby, Derek Krim, and Kevin Spading. They're all members of our alcohol and drug counseling program here, are sharing their expertise, guiding our students, not just in learning about how to be a good counselor, but also in how to engage our community in active work. And we are grateful for all that they do for the students, for the university, and for the community. So join me in giving them a round of applause. And now, it is really my great pleasure and an honor to introduce another member of the university community who will bring today's opening remarks. The Honorable Andrea Jenkins currently serves as Vice President of the Minneapolis City Council, representing the city's 8th Ward. She earned her bachelor's degree from Metropolitan State University, so she is a member of our family forever, and has since earned 2 master's degrees. She is an accomplished writer, performance artist, poet, and transgender activist. She is the nation's first African-American openly trans woman to hold elective office. Historic. She worked as the curator of the Transgender Oral History Project at the University of Minnesota's Jean Nicholas Tretter Collection in gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender studies. And she was recognized for her work and her great potential in 2011 with a Bush Fellowship. As she comes to explore the dynamics of gender and mass incarceration, please join me in a very warm welcome for the Honorable Andrea Jenkins.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Challenge well noted. And we are very, very deeply concerned about early childhood education in the city of Minneapolis. And so definitely want to stay on par with our sister city over here in St. Paul. Good morning, attendees. How is everyone today? So my name is Andrea Jenkins, and I'm the Vice President of the Minneapolis City Council. So I bring you greetings from across the river. And I just want to take a time to thank the organizers of this important conversation, and thank you for inviting me to participate. But before I get too deep into this, to my comments, and I'm noticing someone here is reading Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson from the Equal Justice Initiative. And it's a book that I'm currently reading right now myself. I think it's always important, as President Arthur just did, to acknowledge that we stand on Dakota and Lakota land, on stolen land, in a country that was built on stolen labor by enslaved Africans. And so it's always important that we have this, that we acknowledge this reality, because it's only when we do that we can begin to heal. So it is not stated to try to inflict guilt upon anybody, but it really gives us all a current understanding so that we can begin to move forward. So I want to welcome you today by asking you to center the most marginalized people among us. And in my opinion, that would be transgender identified women of color, which include Black, undocumented Latinx, African-born immigrants, Asian Pacific Islanders, and Two-Spirit indigenous women. This means that we have to have an intersectional approach to dealing with this issue. You guys have heard the term intersectional, right? The buzzword that every nonprofit or philanthropic program officer is kind of throwing around all over the place. But I want to try to start with a common understanding of how I'm using the word intersectional this morning. And it's a term that was coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. And she was centering Black women's experiences to explain how our legal system does not recognize the intersections and the relationship between race and gender. She wrote, Because the intersectional experience is greater than the sum of racism and sexism, any analysis that does not take intersectionality into account cannot sufficiently address the particular manner in which Black women are subordinated. And I would only extend to this concept to specifically include trans women. So right now there are 2.2 million people in jail or prison in America today. And as of 2014, 219,000 of those people were women. Women are rapidly becoming the fastest growing population in America's prisons. And we know that 35% of those 2.2 million people are African American, even though we are only 13% of the total U.S. population. Last weekend, I had the honor of attending the Black Policy Conference at Harvard University. I was a speaker on a panel at the Kennedy School of Public Policy, and I attended a session called Marked, Understanding the Lasting Effects of Incarceration. While the panel was moderated by a woman, it consisted of all men. And they did not talk about incarcerated women until I asked the question at the end of the panel. And I find it really interesting that two of the most high-profile thinkers around this topic are Black women. Michelle Alexander, who wrote The New Jim Crow, and Ava DuVernay, who produced and directed the film The 13th, which is about the 13th Amendment that actually extended slavery for incarcerated individuals. And I brought up these women because there has to be an intersectional approach to this work. And I brought up Black trans women because that approach must center the most marginalized people among us. When Black trans women are healthy, then all women can be healthy. And we know that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. But many times they are furthest away from the resources. The disproportionate number of women impacted by the prison industrial complex is the lasting legacy of the dishonesty of our country. We must fight white supremacy. We must go beyond just telling our stories. We have to organize and recognize our demand recognition of our basic humanity. And so, to that end, women in Connecticut organized and finally passed legislation, the first in the nation, called SB 13, or Fair Treatment of Incarcerated Women and Transgender Women. And it's the first legislation in the nation that bans the horrific practice of handcuffing mothers during childbirth. It provides free feminine hygiene products for incarcerated women, which I don't know if people are aware that in most penitentiaries, women have to purchase those items. They're extremely expensive. They're taxed higher than many other products in our society, and many times they can't afford them. So, and then this bill also acknowledges people's gender identity and providing services and housing based upon people's self-determined gender identity. So advocates and community groups like Planned Parenthood of Southern New England and the ACLU of Connecticut and the Keto Center for Health and Equity work together to ensure human dignity for the most marginalized people in our society. And so like you, I am excited to hear from our keynote speaker this morning. And also like you, I will be working in my role on the City Council to do things like end cash bail, which we know holds many poor and impoverished women. Many poor and impoverished women and others in jail without being convicted of a crime, but simply because they don't have the money to afford bail. As a poet, I just want to share an excerpt from a longer poem that I wrote several years ago, and it's titled, Calling for the Recognition of Self-Love as a Legitimate Relationship in the Game of Life. What we do. Challenge all of your preconceived notions of the false binary theory of gender. We do drag on your stages. We take the heat along with others who might be men that are super effeminate or women who are hyper masculine. We seek out safe bathrooms and friendly faces in a crowd, 'cause it's nice when you get a smile. We fight for the girls locked up in the men's prisons and the boys locked up in the women's prisons. And we write words, beautiful words. Thank you for inviting me to this wonderful dialogue this morning. I hope that you all come up with some solutions that are intersectional, that center the most marginalized in our society, because we know when we do that, we improve the life and health for everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councilwoman Jenkins, thank you so much again for being here. It certainly is an honor to have you deliver those remarks. I'm very pleased to have, also honored to have our keynote speaker and the folks who are working with her this morning. While I bring her PowerPoint back up, I'm going to invite David Isham up to introduce her. David is one of our admissions counselors and our American Indian liaison. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Oh, I did a song and dance over here. Ani and David Isham in the Shanikas. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Lakota Rain Nation in northwestern Wisconsin. If you don't know where that's at, it's up by Hayward, Wisconsin. It's just northwest, about 150 miles from here. I have the distinct honor and privilege of introducing our keynote speaker and her group that will be on stage with her. They are consultants of the American Indian Prison Project. As I announce their names, they will come up and take a seat on our stage, and then I will talk a little bit about our keynote. So if you would welcome, please, Austin Owen, a member. Austin is a citizen of the Lakota and Hopi nations. Lana Hunter. Lana represents the Dakota and Tlingit nations. Teresa Nord. And friend. Teresa is a citizen of the Navajo and the Apache Nations. Delicia Rodriguez. Delicia is a member of the Red Lake Band of Ojibwe. Betty Barola. Betty is a member, or my apologies, Betty is a citizen of the Ponca and Hopi Nations. Welcome them, please. The distinct pleasure I have is to welcome our keynote speaker, Stephanie Autumn. Stephanie is a citizen of the Hopi tribe. Stephanie Autumn has 38 years of local, national, and international American Indian advocacy and policy work experience, and has presented at various human rights forums at the United Nations in Geneva and in New York. She has worked throughout the country on issues of American Indian adult and juvenile justice, substance abuse prevention, restorative justice, and tribal youth mentoring programs. Ms. Autumn served as the executive director of the Minnesota Restorative Justice Campaign for 5 years and is a skilled restorative practitioner, facilitator, trainer, and circle keeper. She has provided expertise testimony for the Minnesota and South Dakota Departments of Corrections with regards to traumatic brain injury and trauma-informed care needs, issues with incarcerated American Indian youth and adults. For the past 20 years, Ms. Autumn has provided expertise to the Minnesota Department of Education on disproportionality issues that impact American Indian youth and communities, and she is the founder of the American Indian Prison Project Working Group. A round of applause for our keynote speaker. And at this time, I would like to present Stephanie with tobacco. Tobacco is a very sacred plant in Native culture. It helps carry our spirit, our words to the spirit world. So I am going to present Stephanie with some tobacco.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as a offer for being here today, we have some sage and wild rice for you.
All right.
So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, sir. I believe my sound is on. And Stephen up there, if you can bring the house lights down just a wee bit. Thank you. Loma, Ihaniwashte, good morning. Thank you to every human being that braved the roads, braved the weather. Thank you for taking part in a very critical conversation that needs to be reverberated in every town, in every city, in every state of America at this time. Before we begin, I just want to further plant the seeds that our speakers with the opening remarks did, and remind all of us that the land we stand on today belongs to Dakota people, Dakota Nation. That the land that this university is built on belongs to Dakota people. In our honoring and acknowledgement today, we want to recognize anyone in the room that is an incarceration survivor. If you are an incarceration survivor, please stand up and let us honor you at this time. Thank you. In this moment of honoring, we want to also ask the family and relatives of incarceration survivors and those that are currently incarcerated anywhere in what is called the United States of America today to please stand up so we can honor you as well. We'd also like to take a moment to honor and acknowledge all the wisdom keepers and all of the experts that are contributing their life, their experience, their heart to all of the sessions that you will take part in today. Please stand up. Everyone that will be facilitating or leading a session, please stand up so we can honor you. And most importantly, for those that have worked the last year, it usually takes a year to pull something of this merit together. Can we please have every person that contributed to making today possible for all of us? Please stand up. In our way, in our indigenous way, our native way, we always start with who we are as a people. And I am lucky to have with me today my youngest son, Austin James Owen. He is the grandson of Amos Owen, a spiritual leader from Prairie Island, Dakota community. He is the son of the late Arthur Clark Owen, and Austin will open up our day for us.
Pidonicha, ta duta, ta oyate, hihashira koyagmani, maza bobdu, wachpe duta, stodeshni, khadaya mani, khate miyaya, khadaya iyankaha, dawansa, hephan, Shunkaska, Tukashiku Chahadamani, Ite Duta, Kabadecha, Hepi, Mahpia Akanaji, Hanke Dakota, Chaske, Hanke Dakota, Kategara, He Inkpa, Hanke Dakota, Nampeshni, Wakantanka, Tukashitku Iki Ranaji, Na Ka Akanaji, Wakute Via Yamani, Aichaha, Hota Iku, Chetan Hunku, Chankahada, Hadaya Hihuda, Oyate Aku, Bema Uti, Wakina Chistina, Tate Hidihuni.
Noe, Wache, Wache, Yapi. Austin Makiapi, Ka, Tashia Popo, Makiapi, Dakota. Hita Wita, Shinsapa, Utoti Wahi, Damako Daka, Hopi, Wacheo Kiapi, Tokata Kia, Wanieku. Good morning, my brother Peter. How are you doing? Good, I hope. My name is Austin. My Dakota name is Tashia Popo Dewan. I'm from Prairie Island, Black Forest Camp. I am Dakota, and I am hoping I've come to pray for you and the future generation. That song you just heard was a song made by Larry Long, which had my grandfather Amos Owen, and my Uncle Ray singing. And now, like my mother had addressed, I am the grandson of Amos Owen, and she wanted me to say a prayer that he has, but I don't speak to it, Dakota, and I am not him, so I don't feel like I'm in the right to do so. But, like I said, my name is Tashia Popo Dewan, it's metal art singer. I do know my songs, and that, not just in my own way, but that name means something to me as my passion is in music. So also within who I am, it's up to me to hold these songs and to know and carry these on and teach them to my people and the youth and my sons. So the song I'm gonna sing is a 4-direction song. So when I start, we're gonna be facing west, go north, east, south,
Yeah. Wopila. Part of what Dominant Society calls a keynote, we've done our very best to what we call indigenize it. And because of the topic of the conversation today, our goal is to bring in the voices of those that are invisible. And that's our incarcerated relatives, our women, our young people, our men. Before we move on, I need to call into the room the founders of the American Indian Prison Project that crossed over into the spirit world. Lekshi John Aroundsham, Lekshi Clyde Wedshirt, Mashke Marlita Pacheco. I need to call them into the room because without them, we would not be standing here before you. We would not have the ability to do what we've done for the last 20 years, and that is to work in state and federal and tribal prisons, lock up from minimum to maximum to juvenile facilities without asking for any funding until the last 4 years. It is because of their heart, because of their spirit, because of their commitment to our people, and because they are part of that prayer that we have been making since the arrival of the Europeans, since our people were the first incarcerated of any race in the United States. In this discussion today, and in preparation, I was in reflection in terms of what we're calling a phenomena, mass incarceration, a new phenomena for indigenous people, for people of color. It is not a new phenomena. It is the historical reflection of oppression and genocide that we have experienced since the beginning of time. It is not new for us. For those of you that stood up, for those of you that have relatives, you know that it is beyond public safety. It is beyond reducing crime and violence. In order to eliminate and eradicate the increasing rate of incarceration of our young people, of our women, we have to take a step backwards and always recognize where mass incarceration grew from. If we try to look at it as a new phenomena, something on the social justice spectrum that we started paying attention to for 20 years, then it's going to take another 4 lifetimes to tear down these prison walls, to rebuild a way that our people can have good lives, that everybody can walk in equity. We have to look at the founding of this country as the beginning of mass incarceration, from genocide, from colonialism, from slavery, from the past and current U.S. government policies that exist, and the criminalization of indigenous life's ways and spirituality. Today, in 2019, in any state or federal prison that you go into, you have to kill 2 trees and able to have an inipi ceremony, a sweat lodge ceremony, a pipe ceremony. So the incarceration of our life ways that contribute to what we're calling mass incarceration exist exactly the same today as it did in the early 1800s. We have to acknowledge, as difficult as it is, and I know that you being here, you are already working on it in your lives, in your professions, or I am hoping you are, in terms of looking at the intersection of racism, racial inequities, the exploitation, the economic exploitation of not only people, but of the land that we're standing on that contributes to the prison society, the prison profits. We have to look at the criminalization of poverty. It is all of these roots that we have to look at, and we have to look at police violence if we are going to be able to reverse what we're calling mass incarceration in America today. This land that is called Minnesota has an unfortunate history. Dakota women were the first incarcerated women. And they continue to be a large population within this state.
At the hands of your United States and at the will of your president, Abraham Lincoln, 1,600 women and children and elders were incarcerated and kept in a stall just at our creation place, at a place called Badote, at the convergence of two rivers that come together, or what is known now as the historic Fort Snelling. 300 of those women, children, some elders would die before they were force marched 339 miles to what is now Crow Creek, South Dakota. And the only reason why they called it Crow Creek was because that was all there was there to eat, were crows. And at that camp, at that internment camp, they went from one incarceration state to another with no food, nothing to eat. And many of our women were forced to do things for food that none of us could even imagine. At the hands of your government, at the hands of your policy, and at the hands of the Minnesota Territorial Legislature, we were removed from this land forever, forever excommunicated with our Ho-Chunk relatives. And 2,000 of our men, Dakota men, were put on boats. They were put on trains, and some of them shackled together 2 by 2. So this mass incarceration, this is the policy, the will of the United States, the policy and the will of this state of Minnesota. And for that, we claim this land. We speak our language today on this land. We sing our songs on this land. Dakota Makoche. This is Dakota land.
Bonjour. I stand before you representing the forgotten Dene women who were forcefully removed from the only homes we had ever known and our livestock killed. Over 8,500 men, women, and children were forced to march to Fort Sumner, to a prison camp called Bosque Ronaldo in northwestern New Mexico. The conditions were fierce, and many men and women and children died. The elders and pregnant women who could not keep up were shot and killed. Nearly 300 perished before reaching the prison camp. Under the orders of Corporal Kit Carson in 1864. It was 4 years before the white government realized their experimental prison camp was a mistake, but not before 2,500 of us prisoners died from starvation, disease, frigid temperatures, and harsh punishment from the soldiers. In 1968, a treaty was signed to release the prisoners and allow them to return to just a small part of their land, their home in northern Arizona. Many did not go back.
I stand before you today representing the women incarcerated throughout Minnesota. I can only give you a mirror image of feeling alone, a vision hopeless, direction lost, torn away from anything and everybody that you've ever known, lost communication with family, your culture, your tradition, your people. Physically isolated, mentally worrying, spiritually damaged, and emotionally broken. Are only words that I could somewhat describe of we as women feel, but as a parent, detachment. The loss of time, growing, and being a part of your children's lives. That's just an idea to give you an image, but that it's not really what it's like.
I stand here before you representing the children of incarcerated parents. We are the children that are born with guards in our hospital rooms. We are the children separated from our mother's touch, her voice, her smell, and her heartbeat we heard while we lived within her. We are the children that get ourselves ready for school without her. We are the children that get home knowing that there will be no mothers waiting for us, saying, "How was your day at school today?" We are the children that cry ourselves to sleep at night, wondering if our mother still loves us. Does she feel the same pain that I do? Does her heart hurt? Does she still love me? We are the children of incarcerated parents. We are the children of incarcerated mothers that are
Thank you.
So if you will, sit with us for a few seconds. Be with us in that starting point of mass incarceration. Because though it was in the 1800s that we began that journey, it is in our DNA, it is in our blood memory, it is with us every waking moment, it is with us every breath we take, that incarceration. In the short amount of time that I have with you today, I am not going to cover the full spectrum in terms of when we talk about understanding incarceration, because there cannot be any understanding of any system that thinks that tearing a woman away from her children, away from her family, away from her community to become rehabilitated deserves understanding. There is no understanding. Women that are placed in isolation for weeks, months, years at a time, there is no understanding of that. You could give us 5 lifetimes, and I would never understand a society that can build cages for profit and dehumanize men, women, and children in the name of public safety. There is no understanding of a system such as that. What I would like to ask you to do, if you haven't already done it, as my friend and colleague here mentioned, is there's a book. I read it and I reread it so that I never ever forget what we are fighting. It's Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson. And I would like to call his heart, his compassion, his work into the room with us as we frame up this phenomena, this historical journey of mass incarceration of indigenous people, people of color, from the first landing through slavery, through economic exploitation of today. Brian shares with us that after law school, he went to the Deep South to represent the poor, the incarcerated, and the condemned. And he says, in the last 30 years, I've gotten close to people who have been wrongfully convicted and sent to death row. People like Walter McMillan. In this book, you will learn about Walter's case and many other cases such as his. You will learn about our system's disturbing indifference to inaccurate and unreliable verdicts, our comfort with bias, and our tolerance of unfair prosecutions and convictions. In reading this book, like me, you will be taught how our system traumatizes and victimizes people when we exercise the power to convict and condemn irresponsibly. Not just the accused. With every accused stands a child, stands a family member, stands an extended family. We are convicting them as well. And their community. In this book, Brian shares with us that there is light beyond this darkness, and that he's represented abused and neglected children who were prosecuted as adults and suffered more abuse and mistreatment after being placed in adult facilities. He's represented women whose number in prisons have increased to 640% in the last 30 years. So let's bring it down to Minnesota and South Dakota and any state that has a large population, or what we're calling large. In the United States today, because of genocide and colonization, there is less than 3% of indigenous people that are living in their homelands, living in your cities, living in your society. But yet in every state and federal prison across the United States, we are represented over 10%, over 20%, over 30%. Oklahoma, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, California, New Mexico, Arizona. They are the leaders in mass incarceration of women of color and indigenous women. Native women in the state of South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota are the fastest rising population. And yet, we are only 2% of this state you call Minnesota. I urge, I beg, I plead, each and every one of you, do not just let this be another conference. Educate. If we are going to tear down these prisons, we have to educate, not starting with the phenomena or what we're calling a phenomenon in the 1980s, the 90s, but looking at the historical aspects of mass incarceration with the indigenous people of Turtle Island and the incarceration of Black and other communities of color. I ask each and every one of you not just to come to this conference, but to take an action, to take something you are learning today because it is truth, because it is powerful, because it can help tear down those prison walls. Advocate, organize, and create. The American Indian Prison Project was born in 1988. We were born without dollars. We did our prison work across the country, sharing hotel room points to get our rooms, hotel room free miles, helping each other to get from prison to prison, because there were no programs for indigenous people or people of color to revitalize culture, to revitalize language, to revitalize the right of our people to pray even when they are locked up. There is no funding. Look at your budget, the budget that just passed through Department of Corrections. There is no funding for indigenous people, people of color, to revitalize who they are as human beings. What we know about incarceration is there's no such thing as rehabilitation without healing. And healing begins being able to stand up on your land, in your community, and know that you are more strength, that there is more right with you than what is wrong. I ask you today to join with the American Indian Prison Project to build programs, not just inside, but on the outside. The women and young people and men that we work with, when they get out with less than $100 gate, and they are expected to have housing. They are expected to go through a laundry list of requirements with no supports. If we want to stop this mass incarceration cycle, we need more programming in the communities, in our neighborhoods, for those leaving the prisons. They need housing, they need job employment, but most importantly, they need you to be good relatives. They need you to look at the systems that are keeping others incarcerated. Each and every one of you can contribute to ending what we're calling mass incarceration of women. It's not rocket science, and it does not take a lot of resources. We need to step up in the state legislature and demand exemption of nonviolent offenses from all jail time, from all prison time for our women. We need to demand in our state legislature the decriminalization of addiction. We need to demand the decriminalization of mental health issues and demand that funding to get our people off the streets, walking around, where they land in jail, where they land in prison. We need to demand increased funding for what dominant society calls diversion programs. It's like, when we start doing the cost-benefit analysis of what it costs to hold someone and the outcomes of recidivism, why aren't we there rattling those cages? Why aren't we voting differently to ensure that there's more money in diversion than there is in the DOC funding budget to keep people in prison? I am hoping today that you'll have deeper discussions about parole and probation reform, ending bail, creating bail reform. And one of the most important things to the American Indian Prison Project, just not for our communities, but that is building culture-based programs within our schools, within our communities, around restorative practices and culture. There are not many things I believe in this United States of America, but I believe in restorative practices. We know that it can bring down these walls. It could end the building of future prisons. It can declimate the school-to-prison pipeline. Why aren't we funding restorative practices at the same level that we're funding incarceration in the state of Minnesota? In asking you to be a good relative, what we've learned, every person on the stage and those that aren't with us today, is that in the prisons that we work in South Dakota and Minnesota with women and young girls, that 99.9% of them have been victimized, have been traumatized by personal violence, by community violence, by national violence, by state violence. we have to look at the impact of trauma and its correlation to the rising rates of incarceration of women of color and indigenous women. I ask you to please get involved and look at how are we creating resources for our incarcerated women and those that are leaving in terms of the roots of trauma. If we don't begin to heal that pain, the cycle goes over and over and over, and it's a never-ending cycle. We ask you to join with us to not just do this conference once a year. We should carry on this conference. We should be convening every month. We should be at the state legislature. We should be in DC. And we should be saying no more. No more. You are not taking my child, no more. No more. You are not taking my sister, no more. No more, you are not taking my mother, you are not taking my auntie, you are not taking my grandmother because of a parole violation, no more. No more needs to be our anthem. Every morning I wake up and I've been saying the same prayer for the last 25 years. I ask Tunkashla to let this be the day that in 20 years there will be no more prisons. There'll be no more people of color feeding this industrialized prison complex. I ask you to join with me today that in 20 years from now, conferences like this will be history. That instead of this conference, we will be doing nation building in every community, in every reservation. We will be building our nations. We will be reclaiming our lives. We will be reclaiming our children. We will be reclaiming our families in 20 years. Brian Stevens also shares with us that there are some basic and humbling truths, including the vital lesson that each of us is more than the worst we've ever done. In his work with poor and incarcerated, he has been persuaded that the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. He guides us to the truth that the true measure of our commitment to justice and the character of a just society and our commitment to that just society is equity. And it cannot be measured by how we treat the rich, the powerful, the privileged, and the respected among us. The true measure of our character moving forward is how we treat our incarcerated, how we treat our poor, how we treat our accused, and how we treat the condemned.
I am more than a number. I am more than an addict. I am more than an offender. I am a mom. I am a sister. I am a mentor. I'm a friend. I'm a daughter. I am free.
As I get to work with women monthly, twice monthly, providing Inipi or Sweat Lodge ceremonies in Shakopee Women's Prison and Sacred Women teachings, there's a few things that I have learned. One is that they are my teachers. They are medicine women, they are healers, they are mothers, aunties, grandmas. They are powerful. They are not invisible, and they will not be silenced. They are you, they are me, they are us. And our Native women make up 24% of Shakopee women yet we're only 3% of the population. This isn't about the violent offenses. This is about nonviolent crimes. These are our women. These are our sacred women.
I have one word to express who I am. I am a survivor. But as the voice of those still incarcerated, are strong, courageous, beautiful, loving.
We are the children who will use our voices to remind policymakers, judges, and prosecutors that there is an absence of justice in the society for women of color and Native women. We are the children who will use our experience and our hearts to remind each of you to hold compassion to incarcerated women and their children. We are the children that will use our minds and our spirits to end incarceration of pregnant women. We are the children who will stand strong against the wind to change social and justice inequities that exist for incarcerated women and their children.
So I ask each of you to rise up with our women. I ask each of you to look within your spirit, to look within your heart in terms of the impact of mass incarceration in your family, in your neighborhood, in your community, and to begin the journey of healing with us as we work within the state and federal prisons. There is a Buddhist teaching that the future generations cannot heal until we make that step forward to heal the past pain of the generations that came. So I ask you to join with us as we live in a way that liberates the ancestors and the future generations who are inside of us, to rise up and join with us to joy, to peace, to freedom and harmony. As these are not individual matters, if we do not liberate our ancestors, if we do not liberate our ancestors, we will be in bondage all of our life. And we will transmit that to our children and their children. Now is the time to do it. To liberate, this means to liberate ourselves. This is the teaching of all the ancestors. As long as the ancestors are still suffering from this Dakota homeland, we can never really be happy. We have to take one step mindfully, freely, happily, touching the sacred Unchimaka for ourselves and for those that have yet to be born. If we can heal within ourselves, if we can reach backwards into our spirits, those that stand behind each and every one of you, and those that are not born, we can make a reality that in 20 years, no more, no more, no more. Mutakiasi, thank you. My son will close us out. Wait, we're not done. We're gonna end with a song. For those of you that are 29 and a half like me, in 1960, there was a movement that came from the incarceration and injustice that indigenous people faced in what we call the United States of America. And that was the American Indian movement. And we have a song, and my son is going to share that song with you.
While the panelists are getting set, I just want to express deep appreciation again for Stephanie Autumn and her guests and all they provided for us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you.
Okay, everybody, please stand up, stretch out. Let's stand up. Come on, stretch. Let's do this. Oh, no mic, okay. Stretch, everybody. Huh? Oh, don't shout. Okay, everybody feeling good? Awesome. Sit down and please meet somebody in front of you, behind you. We're not doing church here, but please introduce yourself. Meet folks. They are fantastic, but she's still my favorite.
The other mic runner is next to his head. Okay.
But I have all of you here, right? Cecilia?
Mic runner.
Cecilia. Good. Do we? Where are the mics? Hey. So I have some folks in the back. Please come down. There are some seats over here. Fill all chairs. Oh, man. I'm like, whoa. Okay, can y'all hear me now? Okay, great. So if you will, take your seat, and we are going to get started with this amazing panel and the panelists. And here's what we're going to do, right? Instead of me as a moderator taking up your time, I want to quickly indulge them in this process and engagement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand this mic over to them. They will not be talking as loud as I do. I'm sorry. But so I apologize. This is just me. But truly appreciate all of your presence here. You all know where the restrooms are. You all know there's more coffee and places to hydrate yourself and relieve yourself at the same time. But welcome. I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves quickly, their name, and then real quickly about a description of who they are and what they do for right now. And then we plunge into questions and thoughts and reflections and restoration. So we'll start right here.
My name is Cecilia Ville, and I'm the executive director at Start Anew, and I am an informally incarcerated person.
Let's say it one more time. When she says the name, everybody say, hey. Okay, one more time.
Hey. My name is Cecilia Ville, and I'm the executive director at Start Anew, and I am a formerly incarcerated person.
My name is Asia Marie Ross. Hey. I'm a youth justice advocate and a creative and formerly incarcerated youth.
My name is Melissa McMillan. I'm a student here at Metro State, and I'm the president of the Alcohol and Drug Counseling Student Association, and I have experienced incarceration.
My name is Diana Current. I'm transgender, and I'm transgender resource coordinator, and I try to represent the transgenders in Minneapolis, and I'm an ex-convict. I got 23 years in prison.
Hey.
Buju Beniji Wang Nebi Okoye Indishnakas. My name is Teresa Nord. Hey. I'm a parent mentor at the ICWA Law Center, Indian Child Welfare, and I'm also a liaison and facilitator for the American Indian Prison Project.
Okay, so for right now, we want to just quickly ask them to reflect on their path, their stories, and what brought them here today, right? Where are they now, right? Their path and a reflection on their pathway to where they are today. So I want to invite us, any one of you, to jump in. Since you started earlier, I'm going to ask Asia Marie. Don't tell her.
So where my past has brought me today, like I said, I'm a youth justice advocate. My primary focuses are ending youth incarceration, ending all incarceration, but ending youth incarceration and creating alternatives to incarceration, primarily using the arts. Like I said, I'm an artist. I paint, I do poetry, spoken word, theater work. I just started DJing a couple weeks ago, so arts are a major influence in my life, and that's kind of the foundation that I stand on in just about anything that I do, especially when it comes to creating alternatives to incarceration.
Melissa, again, I would love to work with women with children in my field when I get an LADC, possibly my master's in co-occurring. My past has brought me to this point because I am a woman in long-term recovery who had to sign her rights over to 2 of her children and go do 87 months in prison for my drug addiction.
Well, my past brought me down this path that I never thought I'd be going down in my life. And I did a lot of mistakes in my life, and I made bad decisions. But you know what? I can't dwell on it. I go forward. And so everything I've learned, I try and advocate for other people and try and make a difference and talk to a lot of people in the community. I don't know. I just started doing some resource work, and I started being on some committee meetings, and I'm trying to make a lot of changes out there and help a lot of people. I got a lot of people who said, you know, Diana, had it not been for you, I would have never talked about these problems and tried to help myself. And so, you know what, I don't know what it is, but I guess I got a connection with people, and that's what I do, and I'm going to keep doing it.
A little like Melissa, my drug addiction started many, many years ago, which led me to getting a criminal charge for possession of heroin. And I too had to sign over sign over custody of my daughter and go and serve a couple years in prison. And that journey brought me to where I'm at today. My passion is working with families who have open child protection cases, who are indigenous and are amongst the highest in disparities, to help them not only fight for their children back, but to also stay out of prison. I now have custody of my daughter back, and I have my newest daughter. So my past has made me who I am today. And like I said before, I'm more than just a number. I'm a human being.
Let's see. First of all, I've really got to give honor to God for where I'm at today and where I've been. Definitely all the time. My journey, how I got here, I had addictions, no money, all kinds of things that led me to where I am today. Several incarcerations, lots of trouble. But who I am today is I graduated here from Metro, but I'm working on my master's degree in divinity. And then I also have Start Anew, which I am the executive director. And then I'm planning on doing some consulting and public speaking on my own outside of Start Anew. Because on my last incarceration, I met a lot of women that were not as fortunate as me because I was really blessed. I had support. I had family support. I never lost my kids in all my years of madness. I never lost the kids. But I met women that didn't have money. They couldn't afford stamps, female products in prison. M&Ms. And so while I was there, I just said, I got to start this program when I get home. So that's where I'm at today, working on this program and trying to be a voice for the women that are still there that I left behind.
You got us started on this next question that they had for the panel, and then I guarantee that you all will be able to indulge them. So just real quickly, if you will, reflect on what are the specific challenges for trans community as well as women in our prison systems, right? As the way our prison systems, our incarceration system is set up, what are the specific problems it poses for women and transgender communities?
Melissa, again, grateful to be here. So personally, the things that I experienced that were challenges were being a mother, a single mother, and getting in trouble with the law for handing over my boyfriend's drugs to an undercover cop got me involved with a choice I had to make. The task force had told me you can go and sit in front of a judge and you'll probably go do prison time and lose your kids, or you could work for us. So I didn't know where my children would land if I went to prison, and I was afraid for them, but I knew I had a drug problem. And I started working with the task force, and they put me in the trenches, and I had done that for a year. During that year, I got pregnant with my daughter, and I was 8 months pregnant when someone knocked on my mother's door where I lived and threatened my life. And that's when I stopped working with the task force, and that's when I went in front of the judge. I still got my 87 months. I still did everything that would have happened if I hadn't made that choice. Although working with the task force kind of held me away from getting the help I needed and the child in my belly. Fast forward to me getting out of prison, going to boot camp and graduating, doing really well, had another child, and my probation officer never called me for a whole year. I didn't hear from her, but I was working 2 jobs, started going to school. I was getting my sorority meetings. I had met my current husband, and I called her after a year and I said, would you like to see me? And she was like, oh yeah, come on in. I came in with my baby carrier, my daughter, and she said, now tell me something so that I don't take your child from you and put you in jail. And I immediately went back to that trauma of losing my first 2 kids. And my whole body shook. I didn't know what to do. There was nobody even to come pick up my kid from me just in case I went back to jail. For what? For not calling my probation officer. Yeah. So that's just a couple of challenges.
Well, like I said, I've been incarcerated a lot. I started out as a juvenile and worked my way up, got certified, and I got 23 years in the system. But I've made a lot of mistakes. They're my doing. I guess it's the way I grew up in my environment. I grew up in a dysfunctional family. But I could have probably changed. It would have been difficult, but my family life was, it wasn't easy. There was no love in the household, and I didn't really care about nothing when I was growing up. These days, I got in trouble not too long ago, just last year, and I had some attorneys come talk to me, and they said, you know, Diana, you never took this opportunity to ever be honest or drug-free in your entire life. Why don't you just try it? I said, I've never had opportunities to try to do this. I've never had treatment, nothing. I've never had it offered to me ever in my life. Not while I was in prison or anything. You know what? I took a chance and I did this. I got a judge let me stay out on 5 years probation. I got 95 months over my head right now. That judge was supposed to incarcerate me, but for some reason, that judge thought I had something to give to society. Now, I didn't think I'd be here speaking to anybody, but yet here I am, a felon, an ex-criminal. But you know what? I'm an individual. I'm a human being. You know what? It's hard for us to come out of the system and try and adapt to society and society's rules. Not only are we addicted to drugs and alcohol, we're addicted to money and other things. That's an issue. If I don't have a couple $100 in my pocket, I'm not happy. But you know what? I don't feel like that these days. I can live without it. It's not easy. We all strive to survive. I take every day as a challenge, and I go take my life day by day. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm trying to go down this positive road, and I have been doing it. I got a lot of people who love me and care for me, and I still talk to these lawyers. They're really helping me out. They're in my corner. They don't have to be. They're my friends. And I'm meeting a lot of other people, too, and they're really helping me out, and I appreciate that. Now I'm paying it forward. Any way I can, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing a documentary. The lady has me in a documentary for sexual abuse and surviving, stuff like that. I'm a sexual abuse survivor. And we all have trauma in our lives. Everybody does. And unless you speak about these issues in your life and heal within, you'll never heal from your addictions. And you know what? I have a lot of friends and family who are incarcerated. Some of them will never get out. It hurts every day. My parents died when I was in prison. I have to live with that. These are things we can't take back, but you know what? Doesn't mean we quit. So we keep going forward. And that's what I do.
Some of the real challenges that I face, not just while I was in prison, but the thought of being released from prison was a huge challenge and a major fear of mine. I didn't have anywhere to go. I had lost my home, my car, everything I owned. Most of my family didn't want to have anything to do with me. I lost my daughter. So I was getting out homeless. Where was I going to go? And one of the major challenges, especially for women, is the lack of resources, the lack of sober housing, the lack of halfway houses or treatment facilities that will allow children. There's just a huge upset, especially in the indigenous community and the African American community. So those are the challenges that I faced getting out, and so now I feel very strongly and passionate about the work that the American Indian Prison Project does with the reentry women who get out and they don't have resources, they don't have housing, they don't have support, and I'm here to say welcome home. Because that's all I can offer is a hug and some medicine and some support. So I feel like if there's any of you out there that have any option to any kind of resources for housing for women when they get out, please spread the word because it's very badly needed.
For myself, I'd say the biggest challenge that I faced, I was on probation as a juvenile and experienced the system as a juvenile. And for me, it was just hard. Like once that part of my life was over, once I had completed my conditions of probation and all that, I thought that I was gonna then be able to move on and figure out what my purpose was and find the job that I felt good about. And once I started doing that and really began to feel like I had a grasp on this thing called life, all the walls fell down. My juvenile record came back up. I got released from my job, and I had to pay for this time all over again, which I thought I had already paid for. I had to put more effort into reclaiming my life back into society. In addition to spending the time that I did when I was supposed to be serving my time. And that's just something that I wasn't prepared for, because I was told once I finished my conditions and it's juvenile probation, it wouldn't trickle into my adulthood. So another challenge was the matter of misinformation, not knowing how it really happens once you get off of probation. And then I had to go through the expungement process to get my job back and go through like hearings and all that. A matter of like, once I went through that process, that was my first time of me seeing like my police reports and, you know, the other person's side of the story, and just seeing how like dramatized the police reports were and overly exaggerated they were. Seeing those like 5 years later and not at like my court hearing, and to be able to say like that didn't happen, or, you know, that's not true. If I would have known that then, my cases probably would have been different. So just a matter of like the truth being withheld from both sides, and not understanding how exactly the court process works and how that can trickle over into adult life.
Well, all of us have basically had the same challenges. No support, no resources, well, not very many, not to say none, but not very many. But I think one of my biggest challenges was like the embarrassment and the shame. And getting over that, we're talking about my history and whatnot, and that was a big, big challenge to me. Housing, like I said, I was truly blessed. I was fortunate. God was good. I had family. I had a place to stay. He worked in my life where I got a job right away, which was a surprise to me because of my criminal history. And just getting over the shame, once I got less embarrassed about where I had been and learned to look at, okay, that was who I was, or that's what I did. I used to tell people that what I did was a verb. I'm a noun, so don't look at my actions, look at me, who I am now. So that was basically my biggest challenge. And then also reintegrating with my kids. That was, wow. I was embarrassed to say, hey, look here, I don't want to look at you guys right now, because I had been in a controlled environment where all I had to look at was a bunch of women and stay over in my area, stay in my lane, and do my time. And then coming home, they were expecting something from me that I wasn't prepared for. One time, it was my birthday, and I was in the halfway house, and my mom said, so you're coming home this weekend? And I was like, ooh, I forgot to sign out for the weekend. But really, I didn't. I just didn't want to go home because I had 5 kids, and everybody was pulling at me. Mom, Mom. My mom was pulling. My PO was pulling. Everybody just grabbing me, and I felt like I was being stretched everywhere. So I was like, no, I can't do this today. And I was in like a panic mode because it was just, I wasn't prepared for that. So I think that even in preparing women to come home from prison, that they need to, well, I can't say what they need to do, but it would be good if they made programs in prison to prepare you for what to expect when you come home, and then also to prepare your family for what to expect when you come home, because nobody knows what to expect. They expect you that you messed up so many times that, oh yeah, she gonna do that same old again. And then you're trying to make these changes, but people are expecting you to be who you were. And hopefully some of us have made changes that when we do get home, and then we have to show them that we're not that person anymore, we're a different person. So those were my 2 biggest challenges.
And also to add to Cecilia's point, and also hearing the mother's experiences too, like my heart really goes out. But on the other side of the coin, in the same similarity, it's like being a young person and going through the system and having my mom having to support me and deal with all that and not knowing how to manage all that, and her being like alone and just going through the process, trusting in. And granted, I feel like I did have a good probation officer, but she had to trust in what the probation officer told her alone. She didn't really know the court system, you know, and that was scary for her because her daughter was involved in the court system. So when I came back home, it was hard for her to feel like she could trust me again. It was hard for us to have a good relationship again. And then not only that, again, like I said, she felt she was just alone. There was no support for her as a parent going through having a child in the system. There was no one that she could confide in, no type of support groups for her. And I saw how that wore on her. And that made it really difficult for our relationship. I feel like it made it difficult for her well-being. And that's something that I feel really bad about. Not to put that.
Are y'all ready to take some questions? Okay. Some thoughts, reflections. We want to remind everybody who's asking questions, who's grabbing the mic, to not pontificate too much. We want you to just kind of ask questions, do a little bit of reflection. Let the panelists handle this.
Hello. Okay, so I'm Berlin. I'm a student here at Metro. Melissa, my question is for you. I know you personally, so I know a little bit of this story, but I think it would really benefit the audience if you shared a little bit more about the 2 children that you had to give up and did not end up getting back as a result of your incarceration.
Yes, so I will try to get this out without crying. So, I know it's human and natural, but I want you guys to get the facts. So I will be celebrating 8 years sober this year. And I contribute 15 months of that of me being locked up. But the rest of the time I did on my own every single day. The first time I got to see my oldest 2 children who I lost was at me and my husband's wedding 1.5 years, almost 2 years ago. I fought to try to see them as soon as I got out. I wrote letters to them because I was able to write letters. I hardly ever got letters back because they're children, and that's not, that pressure shouldn't be on them anyway to write me if they're not ready to. That was super hard because they are, blood of my blood, the fruit of my loins. And when I lost them, I was so suicidal. And then I finally get out back into the world again, and I'm like, I'm just going to keep working on seeing them again. I'm going to just keep doing the next right thing so that they can hear from me the experience and not some other foster care, some people who adopted them. When I did sign my rights over, I signed them over in hopes that my mother would get custody of them. She's a school bus driver. She has been for many years, no criminal record, and they denied her. So not even my own family got to raise them. I have no idea why. And they have no idea, I have 2 other children, Lily and Alex. They're 4 and 2. As soon as I had another child, I was scared immediately I was going to lose her, and I wasn't doing anything to lose my children. I am in fear that they're just going to either pass away from something or be taken for some reason. And it's just that trauma that lives inside me because of the experiences I had, and other women are experiencing the same thing.
Two mics. Okay. Where are we? Questions, thoughts, reflections? Yes.
Hi, my name is Charmaine. I really appreciate hearing your stories. Couple things. First off, for any of you, I would suggest getting into any 12-step meetings. There's Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Codependence Anonymous, which is for people who want to get into having a healthy relationship with yourself and others. There's Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. And the reason I bring that up is that I have friends who've come out of prison, and what they need more than anything is support and being able to talk. There are these meetings going on every single day, and they are so helpful, and they're free. So I would just encourage anybody who's struggling to get to a 12-step meeting for your own personal growth. The second thing is, I'm from North Minneapolis, and I would just like to know, as a community, what can we do to help support you and your family when you're in prison and when you come out? Thank you.
Create the space. Create the space where we can speak about our trauma and our experiences that we've had while we're incarcerated. Bring healers to that space. Yeah, just create the space where we can all speak about those experiences and heal from those experiences, and then begin to take those steps forward.
Hi, I live over in North Minneapolis too, and for the community needs to be receptive to people that are coming home from prison, because my question always is to the community, because people don't have a place to stay, but guess what? They are coming back from where they came from. And I'm quite sure there's a high percentage of people in Shakopee from North Minneapolis. I'm not sure, but I think it is. And they need to be housed. The community needs to be receptive to people coming home, and also that they need to be employed when they get home. They need the same necessities of life that everybody else needs: food, shelter, clothing. And it needs to be affordable, but also they need to also look at the fact that it could have been them too. I mean, even in the community, it could be just as well as somebody else in the community. And we, because I do live over north, we need to get proactive with the police, like good policing. I mean, you need police, and we need to have good policing. Don't pull me over because you don't like how I look. Pull me over because you got a good reason to pull me over. Talk to me just like I'm a person, just like you are, because they have the opportunity to look you up before they ever get to your house. So there needs to be some interaction between the community and the police, those that have been incarcerated, those that are on probation, those that are on parole, because it's when you're doing your application do not say, have you been to prison? Are you on probation? It says, have you been convicted of anything other than a traffic citation? So maybe we also need to have meetings, like she said, create some space where we can all get together and look at the fact that 1, 2, 3 of these 5 of us are in these chairs today. It's not a label on our foreheads that say we've been convicted of a crime. We look just like the rest of you in here, and if we wouldn't have told you today, you probably would not know.
Hi, my name is Tashonda. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Tashonda Williamson, and I just want to again applaud the 5 of you for having the courage to share your stories, because I was actually going to point that out, what you just said. I saw a lot of you ladies when we were first beginning, and I would not have guessed the stories that you've had. So it takes a tremendous amount of courage to be able to let your hair down and be transparent. And my question to you is this: how do you feel? I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional because this has really touched me. How would you feel in regards to having at least a group of navigators that would have been able to just kind of point you out in the directions you needed for your basic necessities? Do you feel that would have brought about your sobriety or your change sooner than what it had? Or what are your thoughts in regards to that?
For me, being a juvenile, that was committing offenses. I just needed something to do, to be honest. So when I did get on probation, my probation officer gave me just that. My probation officer is the one who introduced me to painting, the one who put me into like groups with other females because I didn't particularly get along with other females at that time. So, you know, she put me in those programs. She gave me something to do. She gave me those coping skills. She gave me the tools to, when I'm upset, walk away and breathe, or, you know, she just gave me those tools and gave me something to do, and those things that I still utilize to this day. She introduced me to yoga. She introduced me to mindful movement. So just having something to do, having something that occupies my mind and my body and makes me feel good while doing it.
I think that is a good idea. I think it would have to be someone that each individual was okay and trusted. You know, sometimes we have our biases and our past traumas that keep us from trusting certain people. And also, I started out when I was a teenager in the system, so I forgot. I really just wanted to say that encouragement. I mean, because each kid, each woman, each person growing up, we have a skill set, and if someone doesn't come along and say, you are really good at that, you should, you know, go talk to someone, see what we can do with that, and then you would feel more than worthless or whatever your past has told you, whatever those sexual abuses and traumas have told you in the past. You would be like, I don't need to sit in a basement and get high. I need to give more attention and motivation to this skill.
Yeah, for me, I grew up in the system all my life, and I never really put any value on my self-worth or anything like that. And I never felt no true unconditional love in my life till recently, when I started opening up my heart, and real friends and family poured their caring and love. And you know what? You're right. We do need people to help us out in society, but we got to be receptive to that. So, I mean, I grew up being a hard person. I opened up my heart last few years. I dropped down my barriers, and I became another person. So I would never come up here and speak or do anything like this in my past. I'm doing this now because this is how you make changes within yourself and with your future. I do participate in AA and NA meetings, and I do the 12 steps. I'm in recovery, and I've been clean 196 days. Now, quite honestly, the only way people even do this is if they want to do this, because I never wanted to do any of this in my life. Like I said, I've been in and out of prison. I'm a career offender. I've had judges say I should never be released ever in my life, okay? I've made my errors, but that doesn't define who I am now. Or anybody else up here, because we are individuals and we're moving forward. We're not trying to dwell on the past. We're trying to make our futures bright. You're right. You know what? I can't even rent an apartment because of my criminal history. I applied for a painter job last week. I haven't applied for a job in 3 years. You know what? They said, we're going to check your criminal history. I said, okay. The guy came back with a supervisor and 5 pages of papers. I said, oh, yeah, it's a little extensive, huh? Yeah, so the lady was like, yeah, you want to talk about it? So, yeah, I talked about it, and I went in detail, and I admit my wrongs, and I took responsibility for my actions. Whatever happened, it happened. I can't change the past. I can only change the future. They said, you know what, you're a great person. We're going to check. They haven't called me back, but that's okay. I keep putting in job applications. That's what we do. We need help out in society. We need people to help give us support. Housing, job opportunities, you know, people who care. And that's all I ask. Thank you.
What comes to my mind is, for myself and many other Indigenous women that I was in Shakopee with, is the fact that we're not taught as young children in the school system about historical trauma or generational trauma. I didn't know that I was carrying that inside of me for so many years, and that contributed to a lot of my addictions. I didn't know that my grandmother was a boarding school survivor. And the traumas that she went through, the sexual abuse, the physical abuse. Same thing with my grandfather. I didn't know that. And I didn't start learning about that until just recently. So if they could change the history books and the stories that are taught in school to our very young children who are impressionable, who believe that the colonizers that came over here are the ones that found this country. This is our land. We were born on this land. And yet we were tormented and terrorized and starved and beaten and raped and kicked off our land because the colonizers thought it was theirs. So carrying those traumas inside, many of us, they wonder why addiction starts. They wonder, I mean, we were fed alcohol. And they wonder why there's so many alcoholics today. It's not that we don't know about meetings or go to meetings, because we do.
Go ahead.
Hi, so my name's Ashley, and I want to say I commend you guys for being up here and speaking, and it's super inspiring and helpful for all of us trying to understand. I come from a family that's pretty immersed in addiction, and several of my family members are incarcerated for likely the duration of their lifetime. And I have personally had experience with them being released after a long sentence and not having, like they kind of explained to me that they feel like they don't know how to function in, like you were saying, you felt overwhelmed, everybody's pulling you a million directions. So my question is, do you feel like probation officers should be more of a transitional, like, support instead of more of a check-in? Like you said, yours didn't reach out, and you kind of were sought, like, as you were avoiding for a year almost. It was like your fault because your probation officer wasn't proactive and involved and supportive. And you said you had a great one that kind of introduced you to art and, you know, showed you, you know, what your talents were. So I guess my question is, do you feel like our probation officers maybe need to reframe their thinking and approach to be less correctional and more supportive?
I think they need to be more compassionate. I think they need to be more aware of real people who have experienced incarceration and what that feels like and means to them. Because looking at my file, my piece of paper that explains my identity to them is not going to do it and has not. I believe that my probation officer, the one of many I had good intentions, and she was doing her job, and I believe that she has a heart, and she worked with a lot of women. Yeah, I think there needs to be room in that education for them, and CEUs need to be offered and all that for that specific.
Yeah, without a question, the support, or the probation officer should be the support. But my probation officer received a lot of scrutiny because of the things that she was doing. So I don't think it's more so the probation officer. At the end of the day, it's the system, you know what I mean? Because she had people that she had to answer to, had people that they had to answer to, had people that they had to answer to. So that's ultimately what it comes down to. So, I think I just, I got blessed. I got lucky to have the probation officer that I did. But at the end of the day, it's the system, because my probation officer, a lot of the things that she was doing, her job was at jeopardy because of it.
So probation officers are just like we are. They're people. Everybody does things different. You might get a bad, I want to say criminal because I try not to use those words anymore. I don't like those labels. I just don't like labels. But I've had a lot of POs too. One of them, I personally thought she was a total jerk, but I learned on my last incarceration, I was like, I had to learn how to advocate for myself as well. So my PO, guess what, dude? You were going to talk to me today. We are going to sit here. You said I was going to be here 30 minutes. I'm going to be here 45 minutes. You're going to know who I am. We are going to talk. Now, how you treat me afterwards, but I always made my probation officers, we're going to talk about not what you think I need, but what I really need. So in our... our system, because your PO is going to be probably the last person that you meet up with as far as your criminal history, unless you get violated or something and go back. But it starts at the beginning, and in prison, it should be taught to us how to advocate for ourselves also, because I do recognize that POs, I'm not the only person you're talking to every day. Hopefully you'll remember my name. If I'm acting right, you probably be like, go on about your business. And if I'm not acting right, I'm going to see you on a regular. But also for you to teach me, which is probably something I should have learned and I'm not going to say I should have learned it in my community, because I did not wake up and my mom looked at me and said, oh, yeah, this one's going to jail, and this one's going to college. I made choices. I made choices that I had to live with. I still live with them today, but how I live with them, I just was texting with a girl today before this group, and she said, these people are irritating me. They're irritating me and peeing me off. And I said, I heard this a lot of times, but I got it finally, that guess what? Their actions, what they do, I don't have any control over that. The only thing I control is how I react to the situation. And if my PO, and like I said, I've had many of them. I got violated one time. It was her and it was me, because she made me mad, and so I reacted. It cost me. It didn't cost her. So how I react, I learned how to react, but also I learned how to advocate for myself. So when people are going to prison or going on parole or probation, there should be somewhere in there the staff, who all's working in there. I had a counselor. I had all kinds of people. They should be trying to show me the way, or working with me on what I need to do when I go home. How do I need to go home? Not just say, hey, here's your bus ticket. We'll holler at you later if you come back. I was like, hold on, I got questions. And on my last sentence, I wrote places. I signed up for Section 8 and everything. When I started, I got sentenced to 70 months. I was convinced in my head I wasn't doing 70 months. And my sentence was a federal sentence. That was my worst sentence I ever had, because they sent me way out of town. But I got in there and I was like, this is it. I saw my mom cry when she dropped me off. I never saw her crying. I was like, okay, guess what, girl? You messed up this time. For real, I'd messed up, but I seeing my mom in all the car crying when they dropped me off, I was like, I was the only one not in the car crying, but it stuck in my head, and I was like, okay, I'm done with this. And I got a paralegal certificate while I was gone. I had to pay for that. I got a certificate in cabinet making. I got a certificate in framing. I got a lot of certifications so that when I got ready to go home, I was going to be ready. And I was like, yeah, you got a lot of theft. You are not going to get a, I didn't say I wasn't going to get a job. I said, it's going to be hard to get a job. But when I got home, I got a job right away. I advocated for myself. Like I said, my canteen money was spent on stamps and paper and typewriter ribbons. So from my experience, I believe that when people are going in, that the staff needs to once know who I am. Don't pay attention to that little survey that you just created, but know me, and then say, hey, when I come in your office, because I will be there bothering you, that can I get my driver's license back? Can I do this? I was one of the first women that got a furlough from Wasika because they moved the women there. And I was in those law books, and I was in that man's face, and I said, I'm going to need a furlough. And he was like, Miss Stanifer, that was my name at the time. Why do you think you're going to need a furlough? I said, because I need to go home, and when I get there, I need to have driver's license and identification so I can get a job per your mission statement. So he guaranteed me that I could go. So we just... Even if you have someone going to prison, because you know right now that they're not going to be doing that, tell your family, your friends, like I told my son, go in looking better than you came out. Don't sit up and play spades all day. Don't be playing rummy and all that stuff. Do what you need to do so you can look better, so you can holler at them and tell them, I'll write you because I'm not coming back.
I just want to add to that, to like advocating for yourself, and also kind of give you guys a story about like my probation officer. So basically when I was in school, I was breaking up a fight between two brothers of mine, and I was breaking up a fight, and a teacher had pulled me from behind by my hood. Now I'm breaking up a fight with two guys, so of course like I'm gonna be alerted. So I turned around and pushed whoever I thought this person was off of me. Turns out that this person was the teacher. The teacher lies and said that I punched her twice in her ribs. God is my witness, I did not do that. And so I had to go to the office, and I had already been in so much trouble in school. You know, they said I was suspended and I was looking at expulsion. And so I had to have a school hearing for that situation. My probation officer came to the hearing. Well, first of all, I had to talk to my probation officer about this new ticket that I received about like pushing this teacher. So I talked to my probation officer about it, and I told her, I was like, I did not punch her. I pushed her, but I did not punch her. And not only did she say, all right, like, I believe you, she came to my school hearing, she represented me, she didn't violate me for that case because she believed me. She knew that I was telling the truth because that's a relationship that we had. I told her, and I was advocating for myself, like I didn't do what they said that I did. So I ended up getting expelled for the rest of the school year, but I didn't get a violation, which was big because I could have, you know, got locked up or something if it would have been a different probation officer, if my probation officer would have believed the lie that was told against me. So that just goes hand in hand with the relationship with the probation officer and how a probation officer should be a support, and also advocating for yourself. Because if I didn't say anything, I probably would have served some more time for that. No, she wasn't. She was a white woman.
We have two people with mics, and so that will be the last two people asking a question because we gotta close this. So real quick, and then caller, you will get the last question.
Hi, my name is Joe Amrine, and I'm a senior at Augsburg University. I really identified with when a lot of you women talked about how affordable housing is important, and I did my senior thesis on affordable housing, and I know I was looking at the Minneapolis website, and that like when developers acquire city-owned land, they like 20% have to be 60% of the area median income, but the area median income is around 92,000. So I mean that's everyone's income. So 60% of that, even a Minneapolis school teacher couldn't afford it. So some of the, I don't know if Andrea Jenkins is still here, but some of the city ordinances need to be changed, because I think we have a system that stresses people out to the max, and affordable housing would make a big difference.
You are absolutely right. I get clients and they're like, can you help me find some housing? I was like, I'm gonna help you look for some, but you got, well, advocating for themselves, or else if I did it for them, then they didn't really do anything for themselves. But looking at that housing crunch, and I'm like, they got new things out there, which the councilwoman did discuss that today, the new, or someone said that, about the new Jim Crow laws. I'm like, those are laws that are created to keep people out of housing. Criminal history will keep you out of housing. And so things do need to be revamped and revisited. And I need to talk to you when this is over.
I can attest to that. The only reason why I have housing is because my husband doesn't have a felony. That's the only reason why we got a place, and we had to buy a house because I was living with him with my felony. So we applied to multiple apartments, got denied. I even sat there and I said, I have a criminal history. I have a felony on my history. Let me know who I need to send a letter of recommendation to, because I was doing very well. And I knew I could get a letter of recommendation, and we just got denied completely.
Well, one of my past convictions is arson, and it wasn't because I'm a firebug, but it was a personal issue I had with somebody, and I took my anger out on their property, and that was a mistake, and it haunts me forever. So I can't never rent nothing unless I talk to the person who owns that property and convince them. And a lot of times, if their insurance companies know about that, they won't rent to you. That's all there is to it. I can't get no assistance from no county. It's not going to happen. I can't even go to a lot of treatment facilities or whatever and stuff like that. They don't like arsonists. You know, halfway houses, no, it's not going to happen. So, you know, I got to rely on friends and family, and I have talked some landlords into renting to me, and I never had no problems. They didn't give me no evictions or anything like that. You know, so I mean, it's really there's an issue with affordable housing for people who are low income or just ex-convicts or whatever. It doesn't really matter. There's not enough housing out there, and that new housing that they're building and stuff like that, a percentage of that is supposed to go to the low income families. That's part of their deal, but a lot of that goes for Section 8 housing that the state's going to pay for anyways. So the people don't get in. That's what happens. So, I mean, I don't know if people can make changes, but that's what I've observed.
So we'll take questions from Carla. Quick question and a quick response.
Hi, my name is Carla. I work here in Human Resources. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your story. Your stories. Very brave. I applaud you all. My question to you is, you know that therapy in the communities of color is all taboo. When we all grew up, because you all, that's the common denominator here, is being of color. Therapy is taboo. It's like, oh, therapy, what's that? No, we're going to go to church, or we're going to talk to family, or, you know. What do you ladies feel about therapy?
What do we feel about therapy?
Getting, you know, continuing therapy, you know, talking to someone outside of, you know, family or, you know.
Well, I'll tell you right now that the therapy inside the facilities, it sucks. Let's just put it that way. But getting out, absolutely. I think everybody needs somebody to talk to, and usually a non-biased person that you know, can help them get through whatever trauma they need to heal from. For myself, I found a few different spiritual advisors. You know, so I stay connected with therapy through my community, through my mentors, through sober people. As well as going to an indigenous health facility that has specifically trained therapists that know about historical trauma, that know about generational trauma, that know about incarceration and drug addiction and sexual abuse. So I think it can be a huge benefit, but you really have to do your research because therapists are humans too, and they have a lot of baggage and you know, I can't say all therapists have baggage. Excuse me, let me back that up. They have lives too, and unless they are in a healthy place in their hearts, they can be very damaging to the people that they're set out to heal. So that's been my experience.
Thanks. We have a special treat. Sorry, we. Okay, so we have a special treat. I have adopted this kid forever. So this is my daughter, right? So she's going to speak up. She's a poet, so she's generously agreed to do a closing poetry for this particular panel, and then Teresa is going to lead the session. So I'll give this mic back to Teresa.
All right, I don't want to sit down though. All right, I'm not gonna lie, that was a pretty deep panel. There was a couple of times where I wanted to cry, and I just kind of had to like resist crying. So can we take a breath together? So I want to make sure that this breath is in unison, that we're all inhaling together and exhaling together. So try to even out your breath so that we can do it in sync. So on the count of 3, we're gonna inhale. 1, 2, 3, inhale. Hold and exhale. Word, thank you. I'm just gonna get into it. So, if I could, I would free all my brothers and sisters wasting away from the haste of today's insufficient system. I'd wipe the dust off their sleeves, tell them I believe in their prayers and dreams, and that true liberation is the eradication of all oppression. I'd put a pen or a paintbrush in their hand and tell them it's for expression, hoping it's the most fruitful way for them to share their lesson. If I would, I could. If I could, I would fill in all the missing history for a people who are constantly slain but rise above misery. I'd shine their crowns with the finest of silk, mold sculptures accentuating their build, cherish their being with the nurturance of 10 mothers, and revive those who have gone asunder. If I could, I would hold trial against a nation who has stolen, killed, and destroyed for its acceleration, took land from the people who work towards its sanctification. I would bind the bones that scream for justice, then piece them together out of the land that birthed us. I would take us home. Thank you.
I just can't. I can't thank you enough, panelists. Thank you so, so much for everything that you gave us today. And Asia, thank you so much for finishing up with that beautiful spoken word. How's the event for you so far? Me too, me too. In just a minute, we're going to take a break, and we're going to take a break until 11:15. Give us a few extra minutes. What happens after the break is that you go to the breakout session of your choice. So if you could arrive at the classroom by 11:15, out of respect for our facilitators, that'd be awesome. And in your, again, the blue sheet in your packet is where you find the information about what the breakout sessions are, who's leading them, and where they are. If you're not familiar with our campus, just ask around. Someone who is, or one of our volunteers can point you either from the reception area or through this door to the classrooms in this building and the next building. The idea of the breakouts is to stick with the same one morning and afternoon. It's not the same programming morning and afternoon. Morning is meant to be the understanding part, learning more about the particular issue that's covered in your your particular topic area. But the afternoon is where you dig in and you talk about what can make a difference, what can create change, and what you yourself can do. Right? Your part in dismantling the racist, oppressive system of mass incarceration. So enjoy your break, and once your breakout is done, which is about 12:30, please come back to the reception area, pick up your lunch, and back into the auditorium where we'll be having a talk and a choral performance. Thank you.